Alright, we are back for another episode of Chris Bargo's Album Club. As usual, of course, today we will be doing 2 albums randomly selected from a list of anonymous submissions just for the 4 of us, and we will, of course, be doing, discussion of them after listening to them, and, of course, pitting them against each other, saying which one we like better. Today, as usual, with me I have Ben.
This is why I don't leave the house.
Matthew.
You say the coast is clear, but you don't turn it out. Oh, why?
And Fan.
This is why.
Alright, you all ready to hear what today's albums are?
Sure.
Mayhaps.
We're doing some strange stuff as usual. Alright, today's albums are Good Humor by Etienne and The Feminine Complex by The Feminine Complex. Initial reactions, we're going to you, Ben.
I've heard of Sant Etienne. Sant Etienne. Yes, that is actually right, guys, I think. The correct French pronunciation. Etienne. Yeah. Maybe Vauvet is an English band and not actually French.
Yes, I'm aware.
That is a indie dance, that genre band from Britain that I have heard of. That was popular in the 90s. I'm familiar with their cover of Only Love Can Break the Heart, which is of course, great Neil Young song. Shout out to Neil Young. Anyway, and I feel like I've heard from this album, Good Humor. I feel like I've heard their single Sylvie. I don't remember much about him, but it does sound familiar. The Feminine Complex. I do not know what that is. I mean, it sounds like it was Sigmund Freud. It actually seems to be a garage rock band from the 60s, which actually might be really good. So I do enjoy kind of the garage rock sound. It's something like The Kinks or other garage rock acts. Of course, The Kinks aren't really garage rock acts. This album came out in, I can't even tell. This doesn't even seem to be a real album.
So, yeah, I was looking it up. The Feminine Complex is not an album. None of us can find an album by that.
Oh, yeah, maybe we have its name marked down wrong. Let's see. Hold on. Can you find a band name that?
Yeah, there's a band, but...
Well, what's the album name, then?
Live in Love?
Live in Love. Yes, that's the album we're doing, I guess.
Yeah. There's a little late in terms of garage rock, 69. But, of course, garage rock bands continue to exist. A lot of them, of course, bubblegum pop ended up having this kind of normally garage rock sound incorporated into it. Despite us often think about them as opposites. Bubblegum versus gnarly. But I don't know. I'll listen to this. I'll probably enjoy it. It honestly sounds like something Santiago submitted, which I don't know if he did, but it does sound like Santiago submitted it, just like he submitted Poker Home. I mean, this really does sound like a Santiago pick. Shout out to Santiago. That's all I have to say.
Matthew.
I've not heard either one of these albums, but I will come in with an open mind with both of these albums.
Well, that's surely one of the most interesting types of episodes for you. Anyways, Fan.
Yeah, I've never heard of either of these bands or albums. So I have nothing to add.
Oh, and this is probably going to be a dead giveaway for the end of this episode, but I have heard both of these albums, so that probably gives some indication as to who may be responsible for some of this episode's oddities, but yeah, and I've listened to both these albums. I do quite like both of these. I'm not necessarily going to say which one I like better. but I am very familiar with both of them, although apparently not familiar enough to remember the Feminine Complex's album's name. My bad, guys. My bad. But as for it, I'm aware of both of them. I would describe Good Humor as synth pop. Ben was saying he wasn't sure what genre. That's what I would describe it as. It's kind of similar to Behavioral by the Pet Shop Boys. We did that a little while back, if you all remember. It's not exactly the same. They have a female vocalist, very good one. But it is kind of similar in style to the Pet Shop Boys, especially 90s Pet Shop Boys. That's just my own frame of reference there. I'm not a big listener to synth pop, especially going out of the 80s, but that's how I would describe it. As for Feminine Complex, garage rock makes them sound, I think, maybe a bit more grungy than they are. They don't really sound like the Stooges, particularly. They sound very much like what you'd expect from 60s music. It's an all-girl rock band. It is indies, and it's not like a big, funded band and everything, but it's not particularly anything. It doesn't have what one would consider particularly the indie sound by any sort of modern connotations with the word. It's very much kind of 60s-y, ballady, and kind of pop rock kind of sound. It's only very much of the time. I don't remember if the song was 68 or 69, but it was somewhere around there. And it's about what you'd expect from it. I do like it, but not saying which one I like better. We'll have, I think, more to say, me included, once we listen to these albums, but I am interested in hearing what other people have to say as well. So that's about it. Most people didn't have much of an initial impression except for me, and I have maybe too much of an impression, but still I do think should be an interesting episode. So we're going to listen to these albums, and we will be right back with our thoughts on them. Now we are back and have listened to the albums. This time, of course, the albums were Good Humor and Livin Love. Because we've recently done a lot of love-titled albums. And the first album was Good Humor. And we, as usual, will start with you, Ben, unless you are unavailable to speak on it first, in which case we will go to someone else.
Hello, I'm here. Song Etienne. That's close enough. Album Good Humor. I thought this was a pretty solid album of this kind of. It's not quite a LFL sound. That's not right, but it's a sound that's kind of reminds me of the song "Fool" by the Cardigans. All the songs by the Cardigans, but really that one was poppy of them. And I don't know. That's the main thing it reminded me of. It's not quite. Yeah, it's not as guitar heavy. This is not really a very guitar album. It's more dance and more synth and I would broadly consider LFL. I do think it's like a cousin of it in substance, where you have this kind of woman songwriter, which ends up being the defining characteristic of that. Engaging somewhat poetically with topics, while there's other instrumentation going on. But it's not. It has a very guitar heavy genre. This is this more synth pop dance genre that includes Loveful. I don't know exactly what it's called. Wikipedia calls it indie pop. That's include White Town. I'll agree with White Town also sounds like this, though that's not a woman that sings that. Well, this definitely sounds like the Cardigans. The producer of this album was the producer for the Cardigans. So on that level, I like the Cardigans. I think that the Cardigans are a good band. Unsurprisingly, I also like this because it sounds like the Cardigans. I think that it is kind of twee in some places. But altogether, it's a pretty solid album. The songs I liked the best were Sylvie, which I had heard before. but I think it's a very interesting song. Is the person she's singing to who's 17 who's trying to steal her man her sister? I feel like it is.
Yeah, she says it in the song, bro.
Yeah, but I didn't know if he meant that. I mean, I don't know if she meant that literally. I also liked the song "The Bad." I know I'm sick because just saying I like the singles, don't I? Well, I hadn't looked that up until now with the singles, well, but I also like the song "The Bad Photographer." I thought that his chorus in particular sounded quite good. I also liked the opening track "Wood Cabin" and the song "Erica America." Altogether, though, I thought every song on this album was good. It's just like this amazing groundbreaking album. If it is, it's not in a way that I can perceive it. It may be groundbreaking for this artist. I don't know, but it's not groundbreaking to me in any way. I mean, once again, it reminds me of the Cardigans. On the other hand, I like the Cardigans, so it's like listening to a Cardigans album. I'm not gonna complain about that. I thought some of the songs were interesting. My reference to Lila Phil is a sign that I think that the writing was interesting. Right? The important thing about Lila Phil as this other genre of more rock or folk songwriters is this writing. Right? That's the main thing about that. I thought that the writing on here was also good. So that stood out to me. Musically, it was also quite good. There were some places where I liked the keyboard part, especially on the first track. I don't really have that much else to say, though. I thought that this was a good album. I don't know why they're named after a city in France, which its name translates to St. Stephen, but I don't know. Otherwise, it's a good album, good solid album.
All right, and before we go into Matthew, I just want to say I feel like Ben's obsession with Lil Phil is kind of ill-fitting here, considering the fact that this band was founded by two guys. Yes, it has a female vocalist, so it doesn't mean it's the same thing as a solo female artist, though.
Well, look, I'm not saying it is Lil Phil. It's not Lil Phil. I said that repeatedly. I said that some of the songwriting remind me of Lil Phil. I think there's a difference now.
I'm just saying, I think...
Obviously, the Cardigans were also not Lil Phil.
I just think comparing it to something like the Cardigans is more appropriate. It's not... it's a band that has both male and female members. In this case, it's a female front woman and then also some men. So kind of like Blondie in terms of gender composition, but not white in terms of sound. But
yes. I mean, it was just an analogy. It was not literal. But I do think the success of this album, insofar as the success of the United States was influenced by that. Just like I think the success of the Cardigans in the United States was influenced by that. Tone. I will stand by that. I will not stand by the comment that this is Lil Phil because I didn't say that. Anyway, go ahead, Matthew.
I thought this album was just fine. It's inoffensive. It's in one ear, out the other, but it's not bad music. My favorite track on this is probably Mr. Donut. Of course, I've heard Sylvie before. I think Erica America was pretty solid. I don't think there's any song that's like particularly bad or offensive to my sensibilities as a music listener, but it's a fine album.
Fan.
So this album was kind of like background music. It was good drumming, good percussion. It's a very rhythmic record. It's definitely a far cry from like disco. Especially because 90s kind of had that trend of very soft-voiced female singers. It was just kind of like the styles of the time. I like disco, which is very much not that. Almost more akin to like early 70s country female singing in some regards. I liked Sylvia, Split Screen, and Lose That Girl. Those are good tunes. Bad Photographer had a really cool chord progression. But other than that, the music is kind of just, like I said, background music, kind of. It's it's kind of in one ear, out the other. Um, Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, just kind of there. Um, Despite these guys being a dance band, I don't find this being a very danceable record overall. It's kind of too chill to really be a good dance album. It's definitely an indie record. A very percussive indie record is kind of how I think about this. Um, like I said, there's some highlights, and it's got a good sound to it. I mean, I'm sure if you like this kind of thing, you already know who these guys are. Um, Also, I was this is a weird little aside that I saw on Wikipedia that they're on Creation Records and they delayed this album like basically an entire year just to put all the efforts out on promoting Oasis's "Be Here Now," which did work because that album sold millions and millions of copies, I suppose. Although it probably would have, regardless of this album getting delayed or not. It's super weird. I don't know. I thought that was interesting enough to bring up that this album got for almost a whole year spent on just that one record. I really like. I mean, that's a much better album than this one. I really, really like that album, despite the fact that it is pretty controversial. But I think it's a great album. I just thought that was kind of a fun little note that I wanted to share. It doesn't have any impact on what I think about the music, but it is kind of a fun story. Yeah, this is a fine album. I don't foresee myself ever coming back to it, but I don't think I'm worse off for having. Well, I'm definitely not worse off for having heard it either, though.
Alright, well, there's some of my thoughts. I kind of similar to Ben. I did quite enjoy this album. As I said, I have heard it before. It kind of reminds me of the Pet Shop Boys in a way, although it is kind of on the chiller side, so sort of more like Pet Shop Boys on Behavior or something. I like the vocalist. Her name is Sarah Cracknell, I believe. Hopefully I pronounced that last name right. I think she did a really good job. Fan is right that this is very percussive, and is a little too chill to be danceable. That's fine for me. I'm not really a club goer, but yes, admittedly, it's not very danceable. I will certainly agree with Fan there. But I found a lot of these songs to be quite catchy, quite memorable. Sylvie, Split Screen, Mr. Donut, Lose That Girl, The Bad Photographer, Postman, and Erica America all are pretty good. There's a few other tracks that are a little bit weak, or Been So Long, I don't really remember, even though it hasn't been very long since I listened to it. Both the album opener and closer I don't really find all that interesting either. The opener is alright, Wood Cabin. I mean, it's pretty good, but it's weaker than some other ones. The closer, Dutch TV, I just don't know that well at all, but overall, like the middle, quite good, very good stuff. Good lyrics, good choruses, very catchy, good vocals, of course. Well produced. Fan, I think, said something to that effect, although he didn't use those words. Overall, just I think a very solid album with pretty good songwriting throughout, and I feel like it's pretty consistent, even if I said there were a few tracks that were a little less good. So, yeah. Kind of wish maybe I had something a little more insightful to say than just that, but I don't, apparently. So, we're moving on, I guess, if no one has anything else they wish to say on this record. Alright, the next album was Live in Love by The Feminine Complex. Also kind of a strange pick for the album club. We'll start with you, Ben. What are your thoughts on this album?
So let's start by clarifying what track I listened to. I listened to the original listing of this original LP of this, which went from hide and seek to time slips by. So my comments about things that are like audio or later on the album or within that context of that, as opposed to vague abstraction. Anyway, now discussing the actual album. I thought that this album was okay, but I can see why people like it. It does kind of have a, as I said at the opening, there's some level of garage rock sound, but it really reminds me more, and I think it's frankly at its best when it reminds me of either A, the Phil Spector produced girl groups. Yeah, I think it's at its best when it does that, and kind of weaker when it's closer to something like the Kinks. Even though I love the Kinks and like it a lot better with Phil Spector, my fondness for the Kinks doesn't really override this. I'm happy about what Christopher said in the chat.
That was with Bob Dylan, Ben. That was the Bob Dylan channel.
I posted. I was supposed to be talking. I was talking about the last album. It was supposed to something fans said, and I just did post it in the Bob Dylan channel.
Yeah, Ben posted. This is why it reminds me of Lilith Film Music. He actually posted it for Bob Dylan channel of the Discord server. So I responded with, Bob Dylan is one of the greatest female singles, yes. Thank you, Ben.
I mean, I think we could do an episode. I'm sure if I did like lots of research, we could find many, many, many elements of influence by Bob Dylan on Lilith Film. I think that's pretty much shown it. But that's not the topic of this episode.
No. We're not supposed to be discussing Bob Dylan at all.
Bob Dylan. Anyway. I do have more things to say about Bob Dylan, but not right now. So, back to the Feminine Complex's album, which his name is Livin' Love. Even though I'm just gonna go at the Feminine Complex because that's like Christopher did. So I found the first few tracks, but they were alright. They were kind of just generic 60s rock. Like there was not really anything that stood out to them about them. I think the last 3 tracks, and really especially Forgetting and I've Been Walking on You, were a lot better in a surprising way. I do think more of this kind of spectral-y girl group sound appeals in them relative to the rock. But also, I found the singing on them, and I don't know who the singers of these different tracks were, but it seemed like those last few tracks were sung by somebody else. It sounded like. I don't know if that's true though. Maybe I should go look.
Yeah, they clearly have a couple of different vocalists. I can tell the voices are different at times. I just don't know their names or anything, but there does seem to be at least several different people singing at times.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the main point I'm trying to make though is that the singing on those tracks kind of reminded me of these spectral girl groups, but they also kind of reminded me pleasantly of Kim Culpidal's singing. Obviously, just a power to around the time. But I think, and I don't think they'll ever play Count Culpidal at all. They might even be horrified by this comparison, considering Count Culpidal's considered very uncool by rock people, and not entirely wrongly so. But Count Culpidal is a very good singer, so having singing that reminded me of Count Culpidal is a massive compliment. I think that made those last few tracks, a lot more enjoyable. But, well, this album was definitely listenable and it was alright. It's kind of like fans said about the previous album, Good Humor, it was kind of in one out of the other. But like the most substantive thing I really have to say is like, the singing here reminded me of Count Culpidal. That's like the standout element. Is kind of weak. I can understand why people like this album. I think it is a good album, and it really should be more for me than it is, so I have trouble evaluating it, but altogether it's alright. Like, I don't regret listening to it. It's much better than the Kiss album we did.
Okay, we've gotta quit. Even though I'm the most guilty of it, we gotta quit taking pot shots at Kiss. There's a lot of overlapping better ways to describe things.
Sometimes you have to just take a pot shot at Kiss. That's all I gotta say. But it's also just true.
It just felt like it was. It just felt like it was kind of an on here. Anyways, Matthew, it's your turn.
Respectfully, I don't know what Ben was talking about this album. I thought this album was actually pretty solid. Although I do think the Kiss album is better than this one, I think there was a lot of really good stuff in this album. I, of course, also listened to the first 11 tracks. I didn't listen to the extra stuff because I am always going to listen to the standard versions of albums than either deluxe or extended editions of stuff. I think my favorite is probably either Now I Need You or 6 o'clock in the morning, I Don't Want Another Man, or Run That Through Your Mind or It's Magic. Just a lot of like really good stuff here. It's not particularly one of my favorite albums that we've done, but I thought it was pretty solid.
Fan.
So I am I shockingly really enjoyed this album. I had no idea what to expect. I thought this was going to be really boring, and it was actually the opposite. I too listened to only the first 11 tracks. Thank you to Matthew to that. I know he sent it to me and he put it in the group chat. So I also really am a big fan of just listening to what they originally put out, because that's kind of the snapshot. I think bonus tracks and stuff is, I don't know. It's great for a fan, but like I hate when I buy an album and it's like, oh, here's 3 more songs that went on the album. Especially when it's like a concept album. This totally irrelevant. I'm just complaining now for the sake of complaining. But still. So this album is a lot better than expected for me. Hide and Seek for the song was a great bit of psychedelic experimentation. Not every song has super hard psychedelic vibes, but it's always there. You know, if you're looking for the real kind of psychedelic tracks, Hide and Seek, Run That Through Your Mind, It's Magic, and Time Slips By are really the ones. Time Slips By ends with a brilliant piece of experimentation, actually. That doesn't mean that the rest of the songs aren't good, because I don't think there's really a bad song on this album. Or that they don't have psychedelic elements to it, because it is overall, like, definitely of that era and of that sound. It's just those are the ones that really stick out as the ones that have the heavy experimentation, stuff like that. This record does have that grungy kind of dark 60s production sound to it that really enhances a lot of the psychedelic qualities. It also adds a lot to the very prettier sounds too. Like the guitars, especially on like 6 o'clock in the morning, are very pretty. And I think a lot of that has to do with kind of that grungy texture, because sometimes it can completely do the opposite of what you're expecting and really kind of promote just how pretty it is. This album has great harmonies, top notch, and the instruments have a lot of room to breathe. Like, you're able to hear everything. Everything kind of has a good space in it. This album definitely reminds me of H.P. Lovecraft too, which I will bring up every time that we do a psychedelic album, because that is the pinnacle of what studio psychedelic albums. That is by far the best. That is at the top. And it's masterpiece. More people need to hear it. And a comparison to that album is extremely high praise. That's not necessarily in the same ballpark, but it's definitely good. This is the last psychedelic album we did was The Doors, and this far surpasses that album in every way. This is real authentic music. I feel like the Doors is not authentic. I don't know what just happened in a group chat there, but I do want to bring up that I did see it before it got deleted. And this far surpasses the Doors. This is some really authentic music, and it's like very much coming from oneself, and that's always going uh, to elicit a positive response from me. And I thought this was a great album.
I would like to briefly respond to Fan, which is to say, well, I did still think this album was pretty good. I'm definitely gonna have to re-listen to this album because I admittedly, although there were some keyboard bits that kind of remind me of the Dolls album, there were some elements that you said were kind of grungy and like the way that 60s music can be. But it was why I compared it to All the Kings. I don't really see any of the psychedelic stuff you're saying in it. I am actually kind of confused by that.
Oh, did you not listen to the first song?
I did listen to the first
Or the last song. Yeah, there's a lot of psychedelic. I'm surprised you didn't hear that.
I also heard the psychedelic elements. Although it wasn't like, I wouldn't say in your face, but it's there. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that I don't think there was no psychedelic elements or anything. I don't know. This is clearly a good sign I need to re-listen to this album though, because the main notes, not literally speaking, that I was getting were not that. I like the Doors. I'm honestly kind of reluctant to call the Doors a psychedelic album either, though
I don't. I mean, it is classified as one, but I also agree with you that it isn't one. But this is more along the lines of kind of, like I said, H.P. Lovecraft, some of that dead stuff, more along those lines of psychedelic.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I just need to re-listen to this, maybe, because, I don't know, that's not the vibe I got. I mean, on the Doors, I like the Doors album better than this. Maybe I misread this text. I mean, of course, only metaphorically speaking. But this is not the vibe I got from it. That's not the read I got from it. I did think it was still a pretty decent album, though. But, I mean, I can kind of see what you mean by the authentic pull, though. It's quite authentic. That's why I vote for All the Kings. We could evoke artists like that. I'll agree with that pull. The psychedelic pull, I mean, there was some complexity of production here. I'll agree, but I don't know. It seemed more like on the other end of the spectrum. So, of course, the way these things are related is complicated. You can be kind of simple, stripped down, and also psychedelic. But
yeah, a lot of it comes. I mean, like I said, check out. I'll type in chat too. Hide and seek, run that through your mind. It's magic, and time slips by. Especially the ending of Time Slips By. Definitely psychedelic tunes for sure. And throughout the album, I heard elements, especially that organ sound, kind of drippy quality it has.
yeah. I mean, I did like Time Slips By. That was one of my favorite songs of that album, but I will have to re-listen to this pretty clearly. Because the songs that I like the best were Forgetting, I've Been Walking on You, which, I mean, I've Been Walking on You just have, in and of itself, kind of this trippy element to it. Lyrically, at least. But, yeah, the audio tracks I'm struggling more with. But I will re-listen to them and see if that changes my thoughts.
Alright.
Right now, my thoughts are kind of like this album was alright, and I enjoyed the singing on it. But I don't know. I don't feel like I absorbed too much of the instrumentation, for whatever reason.
Well, I'm excited to hear back from you after you do re-listen.
Alright, well, now it's actually my turn. As for me, I actually quite enjoy this album. First listen and re-listen. All the times I've listened. Track 1, Hide and Seek, that was a really good track. I will say track 2 and 3, Now I Need You and All You Lonesome Like Me, are kind of a bit dopey, I think. And putting them so high up, I think our track listing wasn't the best, but after that, though, it gets better again. You've got I Want One, that's a great one. One That Through Your Mind. I've Been Walking on You, that's, I think, maybe my favorite on the album. Time Slips By. You've got, also, I kind of like Forgetting, although it's a little bit of a cheesy song. But yeah, this album, it only has psychedelic stuff in places. It's got, definitely, I don't know what album Ben was listening to, but it's got also some pretty poppy influences in places too. But it's, I think, pretty consistent. It has pretty good songwriting. It's got good, really delivery, good guitar work. It was my understanding a while back when I first found this band. I had read the Wikipedia articles. My understanding this was like a girls' basketball team in high school or something that made this album. I may have the sport wrong there, but I believe this was Girls Who Remember something together in high school. And that they were still high schoolers, I think, while recording this, was my understanding. So, some of the dopiness on a couple of love songs earlier on, and a little bit of cheese here and there, can be forgiven. But it's a very good, more obscure 1960s album with a very 1960s vibe. A lot of 60s elements, psychedelia, but also some kind of elements of the pop at the time as well, especially lyrically. But then you also have, of course, it's an all-girl group. That's pretty uncommon for this time period. But also then does have good songs, good production, a good delivery, as opposed to being, sometimes you listen to these obscure albums from, just X time period, any time period, and, like, there's a reason this didn't hit big, or, you never heard of it, really, it's because it's lackluster. This isn't one, I don't think, that's like that. This is one that I do think is rewarding to go back and listen to. And if you give me just a minute, I will check that. But yeah, I think this is a really good album. Yes, Wikipedia says they were members of the basketball team together. That was about a couple of years before, so they probably just maybe graduated high school around this time. They do have a source on that, which is apparently the liner notes for the reissue.
Okay.
Ben, you want to say something?
Oh, I was gonna say, to be clear, I did not hate this album. I thought it was pretty good. The more color elements of it I had missed. But to be clear, my position is not, even though it has been surprisingly less positive than everyone else's, which is actually kind of confusing to me because I really do like this late 60s music. I really like psychedelic music. I like the Kinks, etc. Which is, I don't know, my take is kind of confusing to myself at this point. But I did still like this album. It was still a good listen, etc. I did not think it was a bad album. It was quite good. Well, I thought it was a pretty good album, but it wasn't like amazing to me. I really did like the singing.
Yeah, I'm well, I guess I should say that here for this next segment, which is which album each one of us liked better. So, once again, the albums were Good Humor by Etienne and Live in Love by the Feminine Complex. Just reiterating those because it's been a while since we talked about Good Humor. Well, starting with you, Ben, which one of these albums did you like better?
Good Humor by Etienne.
Matthew.
Living Love.
Fan.
Give me Live and Love.
Alright, well, as for me, I quite like both these albums, actually. I will say my enjoyment of them is kind of on a similar level. I mean, they're both very different albums. They both kind of have different, I guess, moods, that kind of I listen to them in, I guess. If I'm going to listen to 60s, of course, I listen to Live and Love, and Live and Love is, 60s, that's a bit more what I'm generally into, but I quite like both. I'm very torn on the issue. And we had this discussion, I believe, just last episode about voting and strategic voting, and voting one way or another, whether you're voting because how someone else voted or not. And I'm going to, I guess, kind of maybe bring that discussion just back up here. That was last episode. I'm going to, I think, pull a, that's what Fan did last time, and I am going to vote for Good Humor, I think, not because I actually really like it more than Feminine Complex album, Live and Love. I think I like them both about equally, but just because I do like them both about equally, I think, voting to tie, so, theoretically, though, if you want, and you don't like that, Matthew, you can count me in as an abstain, but just speaking, I like both these albums, so it's maybe a little confusing, but I am technically voting for Good Humor, so it is technically tied, but if you don't want to count my vote, then technically Living Love won, then. And that brings us to who picked what album. I think everyone here probably already knows, but...
It's Chris. Chris picked both albums.
Yeah.
This is the easiest double Chris album ever.
Yeah.
It's literally everything about Chris is these two albums.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously, I was the only one who really knew of these. I'd hold both of them. I kind of, was vouching for both of them. I was actually kind of surprised when the ONG spit these two out together. But, I was like, ooh, and I was like, well, I like both these albums, so that should be interesting. We'll see how everyone else reacts, and I did not actually anticipate the reactions at all. I kind of could have anticipated, I think, Matthew and Fan not being thrilled by Good Humor. I didn't necessarily anticipate how much you all liked Live and Love, at least Fan and Matthew, especially Fan, I didn't anticipate liking it just as much as he did. So that was kind of interesting, in my opinion. So that about wraps it up for another great episode. If you enjoyed hearing us talk about these two albums, please be sure to like and subscribe. It does help me out a lot. Really does. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I just said that. Sorry, my brain just broke. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.